In a world accelerating faster than ever, true leaders rise, not by chance, but by choice. Welcome to the Unshakable Voice, where leaders are forged, performers are built, and mindsets are turned from fragile to unshakable. Be ready to unlock high-performance habits and be ready to master the art of complexity. Please welcome the leadership strategist, high-performance coach, a leader in innovation, and your host for the show, Dr. Nigel Smart.
Welcome to the Unshakable Voice podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nigel Smart, and today we're going to be discussing another one of our series, Navigating Change Like a Leader at a time of unprecedented change, unprecedented massive upheaval in society and in business. And today I'm really excited because I have one of our international colleagues, Alessandro Carli from Italy, and we're going to be sharing some insights into how things are in the European Union and also more specifically in his native Italy. I'm sure this is going to be a fascinating discussion because the countries are evolving at different rates and with different perspectives. So I think this is going to be very, very important for us to know for our American audience, but for our international audience, which is growing. And specifically, I want this to be a big help. You've got a fantastic coach there in Italy. And so to our Italian audience and people that are dialing in from that part of the world, really take note of what the things that Alessandro's going to be sharing with us. I know they're going to be nuggets. I know they're going to be moments of wisdom. So let's dive in and see where this goes. Alessandro, welcome and good evening. I think it is where you are. It's great to have you here on the podcast.
Well, thank you, Nigel. It was nice to. I really took the opportunity to be doing this with you. Well, we haven't really gotten to know each other very much yet, but there was, from my side, there was an immediate, how can I say, traction, from professionally speaking, and so it's an honor for me to be here, and I thank you for having me here.
Not a problem at all. We share, I think, as we're getting to know each other from the things that we're doing on the international coaching stage that we're both part of. Yeah. There's some commonalities there. But let me tell the audience a little bit about you. So you are a coach. You've been in business. You've been a professional coach for over 20 years.
I'm a leadership coach.
Yes.
And I've been taking a road that it's not really common to other coaches because I started in 1990.
Right.
So that's 35 years ago. Not actually as a coach, but I've been working with an organization, an international organization, that was proposing leadership classes, training classes.
Right.
In Italy, there was no such thing as coaching back then. Okay, not that I was aware of, anyway. But these classes, these workshops, seminars actually were 5-day seminars, very, very tough. And I don't think we could do things like that today. But it were very, very tough. And but it was like a group coaching,
right?
Like with let's say 25 to 30 people for each class. Mm-hmm. And so that's where there wasn't anybody there presenting topics to be discussed, but the topics were the people that were there. And so people would learn not so much from what the head trainer, and we as team members, we were part of a team, me and other colleagues of mine, and we were backing him up. And so that was an incredible experience. I've been working with them for 12 years, and I've met with incredible people from all over the world, even important people like even Hollywood producers or people from politics and show business, and it was a great experience for me. And then eventually I started to work on my own, and that was back in 2002.
Right. I want to mention that you're also a multiple author. You've got books like The 5 Principles of Corporate Success,
yes,
and The Pulse in Your Life Connection, the connection to self-esteem. So that's something again which is important for people to tap into I know you're very, very big. Something I love about your work, system intelligence and that side of
Systemic
things.
intelligence.
As you know, very much we talked about artificial intelligence, and that's very much been part of my interest, let's say. And you also something I think that we share. You believe as well in the furtherance or the importance or the coming importance for the future of EQ and that side of things, and the impact that that's going to have, particularly as we bring in tech in the way that's happening now, which is starting to come into every facet of business and also in almost every facet of human life today. So I think that's really, really important for people to share. Sometimes I think people think that we're just tech heads, but we're not. There's a lot more psychological empowerment that goes along with that. And I think unless you actually mesh the two together, you're never going to get the full horsepower, are you, out of the engine, which is driving towards improvement and continuous growth. So let's dive in. One of the things I'd love you to do for the audience, especially for the international part of our audience, is if you could give us a little bit of historical, a little bit historical review about how things have been in Italy, because I know you've explained to me a few times it's been quite different here from other parts of Europe, and certainly quite different from the United States. So I want people to understand, because there are going to be people that are going to be interacting, from the US to Italy and Italy with the US. And I think it's important to understand, if you like, the mindset or the philosophy a little bit. You're very much a pioneer, if I can call you that you're breaching and coming from almost a more American approach and trying to bring that into mainstream Italian business society, if I can put it that way. So tell us a little bit about that so that people can get, in your own words, a better perspective.
Sure. Okay. Yes, as you said, rightfully, Italian mentality is different from an Anglo-Saxon or American mentality. For one thing, you need to understand that there's a different history. Okay, we come work developed in a very different ways, made of shops, of little artisans, of craftsmen, and they then, after the war, of course, the last war, World War II, they developed industries. Okay, well, there were industries already, but not that big, not that many that were big. And but the mentality remained that of the shop, of the artisan shop. And so that's how many of the entrepreneurs in Italy, small entrepreneurs, actually think in that size. Even if they have right now, they have bigger companies, but they still are in that shop framework.
Mm-hmm.
And even the way they deal with people, with their employees, with their teams and etc., is like he's the boss. He's the reference point. So that's a little different. I'm sure there are things like that going on in the United States or in Canada, whatever, as well. But here it's very much, it hasn't changed much because they need to have control. Okay, that's one thing. Like, for example, in 2005, 2006, the Italian government had proposed these small entities. We're talking about um, companies. I mean, there were small businesses with 5 to 30 people. That's that kind of range is what is typical of Italian businesses, 5 to 30 people at the most. And they had they proposed these small companies to unite in consortiums. Okay, so they would have advantages as far as accountability, accounting, and also having to save on costs in a consortium. It just didn't work
Mm-hmm.
because every one of these companies wanted to be independent.
Right.
So that is the way still people today in Italy are thinking. Now, of course, we're talking about 2006. That's 20 years ago. That is like a century ago right now.
Yes.
It's a long, long 20 years is an infinite time
It's a lifetime, isn't it?
today.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so something is starting to change. And I think that AI is helping in this and somehow because we all have to speak the same language.
Mm-hmm.
And so the language barrier where AI is concerned is demolished. It's not there anymore
Yes.
because
Yes.
we all have to speak that same language. And so that's sort of getting many Italian entrepreneurs in that stream of collaborating more and having also to count on people, on experts, on professionals, which are all young, very young,
Mm-hmm.
that know how to work with AI.
Right.
Okay. Because, if you take people 40, 50 years old, they are having a hard time dealing with that today here in
Mm-hmm.
Italy. So in that, I think there's a good, there's a very good opportunity for Italian businesses to open up to also other countries,
Right.
and of course, from the United States, from the rest of Europe. Now, Europe, politically and culturally, is a very, very variegated uh,
Right.
combination of things. It's not like the United States of America, for example, which was born basically, with all the states more or less at the same time, about the 15th, 16th, 17th century. That's where they formed and became the United States. So there wasn't that big of a cultural lapse from one side of the country to the other.
Mm-hmm.
Here, 20 miles from here, you have a different mentality. You have a
Yes.
different culture. And I'm not kidding. If people speak dialects here,
Right.
if from where I live in Marostica, which is close to Vicenza, which is in northern Italy, close to Venice,
Mm-hmm.
and if we move like 20, 30 kilometers from here, they speak another dialect.
Right.
Some of these don't even understand each other.
Right.
See, so imagine the rest of Europe.
Yes, I can. I'm familiar with
Okay.
that type of situation. You see that in other parts. Certainly coming from the UK, I would say I was smiling there because you travel 15 miles or 20 kilometers and the dialect changes. And some of the dialects are very broad. And I have trouble. I have to listen very carefully. But even then, it can be difficult. So I appreciate that. And then I'm sure that does go on to extent a little bit here in the United States. Between the North and the South, you do see there are some variations. I think there's different emphasis on different words here. It's a little bit different, but tell us how things are changing now, and what's important to. Why is it important now for Italy to morph and become more mainstream? You've mentioned that the AI is a good driver. I agree with
Sure.
you on that. That's providing or a leveling, isn't it, of the playing field to some extent, and removing some of the barriers that we had for languages and dialects, because now we're talking where, in some cases, the machine code can take over and translate things without you even having to think about it. I don't know about you, but I mean, I've got translator on my phone. My wife is from South America, and she's Spanish, and so she'll say to me, Nigel, what about this? And we'll just look on the translator, which is on our phones now, and it does things within seconds. Now, even with Chat GPT 5, I think it is, or Copilot, you can type in and ask it to give you the variation in I think we just lost you, Alessandro. Well, this just shows you once again that that this is a dynamic field, and I don't know why that you went away there, but we will sit here and see if we can get you back, and we can always edit this out of our talk. We're certainly being met with some technological challenges this morning. And I hope you are some people in the audience there that can bear with us. I'm sure he's going to come back. I think we did have this happen once before with another guest, and I'm sure he's going to come back. So let's see what happens. Here he comes. Yeah, no worries.
I don't know. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. Don't worry about it. As long as we can keep going, that's fine. These things, my publisher tells me we had one other guest that popped out for about 30 seconds, and they said, no, it's authentic. Let's leave it in. So I said, okay, you're the publishers. You know better than I do. So, but I was asking, tell us why. You've already started to allude as to why it's important that things change. How are you bringing about that change? How are you managing to influence that, Alessandro? Oh, now we've got to freeze. We're freezing. We may have an intermittent issue with your internet connection here, but we'll keep going. And he's gone again. Oh dear. But we can address this, provided we can get him back. And we can do many things here. So it's quite refreshing. I'm hoping that this is pretty cool, that we can get international guests. We have another one, hopefully in about a week, from India, that lives in the Far East. And he's going to give us a similar perspective from that region as well, which I think is going to be very beneficial for you all in our international audience. These things happen, and I think we need to be patient, and we can persevere. I think it's worthwhile making sure that we get these inputs, that we get these types of nuggets from points of wisdom from our international colleagues. It makes the global translation of information and things that we're doing together helps us form new relationships, which is the bedrock of doing good business. So I hope you understand that and appreciate that. I think the thing is that we just must keep persevering and not be put off by these irritations, which are tech related, for example. So we'll see what he is going to do here, see if we can get him back the second time. And maybe what I can do is just pause this. Well, it looks like we've had a problem here. That's a technical issue at the other side. So I think what we're going to do is pause this, and we'll keep this part of the recording, and we'll add a separate date, and we will put these two out together, because I think the things that he was talking about were relevant, and we can dive straight into the rest of the material that we wanted to talk about and share with you another day. For now, sorry about this. This happens. As you can see, it's all real. It's not staged, and I think the value of what is being shared here is enormous. So stay with us, and we'll be back soon. Well, welcome to the Unshakable Voice podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nigel Smart, and we're going to talk on today part 2 of our wonderful interview with Alessandro Carli from Italy. Alessandro, welcome again.
Thank you for having me, Nigel. It's a pleasure.
I want to pick up from part 1, where you gave us a really nice background about how the lie of the land has been in Italy, and how personal coaching has been somewhat in a backwater relative to United States and some parts of the rest of the world. But what I'd like you to do now is to bring us up to speed. You are obviously consulting internationally. I know I work with you in another international group. You're making great strides, and you're a wonderful resource for people there in Italy and around the rest of Europe. So I wanted to ask you, in what ways you think things are changing now, in terms of how small businesses and entrepreneurs are starting to approach, um, mindset issues, personal growth issues, and what do you think's caused that change? Is it an enlightenment? They're just the light bulb has gone on, the pennies dropped, so to speak, or what used to be the lira has dropped, so to speak. How can you give our audience a bit of a background, a bit of a flavor, so that they can have a full appreciation of, well, what's been different in Italy, and how is that changing that's going to benefit sort of global interaction?
Okay, so let's put it this way: managers, executives, these people here, they will, because they're asked to, do some coaching, to do some kind of professional growth, training, whatever. It's perhaps the owners or the CEOs, because everybody likes to be called the CEO today. But as I said, many of the businesses that we have here in Italy are small or medium small. And so, especially the small ones, CEO doesn't really make much sense. They're just the owners, and they're the ones who manage the company. They own it, and they make the decisions. So they expect to have people, that the people they hire, they expect them to work for him or her, whatever. And well, in this, women are more flexible in this. Okay, they're showing much more maturity than men, perhaps because they have nothing to prove. Um, which is which is what is typical about men. They have to prove they're in control, they know what they're doing, they go forward. And whereas women are more available to put themselves into question. They're more keen about growing themselves, even if they're
Right.
owners, even if they're CEOs.
Is
Whereas the
that because
men,
there's been a is that because there's been a historical patriarchal
yeah,
sort of
yeah, yeah,
role towards
yeah, definitely.
differences in the genders in Italy? Probably very
Yeah,
more
yeah. It's
pronounced.
that. Yeah, it's the fact that as I said, if you're small and if you work in a small place, in a small business, your mentality stays small.
Right,
Because I
right,
always say that people have the business that their mindset allows them to have.
right.
Okay, you cannot overcome the mindset. If your mindset tells you you can go up to 10, there is no way you can go to 15.
It's that
It's
idea of
like
like the thermometer effect, isn't it? That
exactly,
if
exactly.
if you think that you can't go above 30 degrees centigrade, then you're never going to grow. If your thermostat is stuck at 10, then
Right.
it kind of limits you, doesn't it?
Exactly. Exactly. Sometimes in my classes, I tell people, we grow in two directions. One is by expansion, and the other one is by evolution. Okay.
Right.
If you can picture that in a graph, in a Cartesian graph. And what is expansion? Expansion is to grow and have more and more of what you already have. So, for example, if you have a certain uh, business turnover, and let's say 1 million euros, and next year you have 1.5, and then two, and then four. Okay, that's expansion, because you are having more and more of the same thing. Then you get to a point where you can no longer go on that expansion
It's a
line. You
linear
need
progression.
linear progression, right? In order to get unstuck, because you get to a point where you meet a crisis. That's what crises are. uh, Crises are telling us that we are stuck, that there's no way that we can expand anymore unless we grow on the vertical axis, which is the evolution. Evolution is personal growth,
Right.
is expanding your mind, is going beyond your perceived limitations.
Right.
And so when these two things go together, they work because then what happens? You go up in the evolution scale and then you start expanding again and you go more and more than before. And then you get stuck again. Then you have to evolve again and then you have to go through the expansion again. And this kind of game that goes on is what enables people to grow themselves and their business.
Mhm.
So, mindset and your state of evolution, let's say,
Right.
always has to match your expansion. You cannot have unlimited expansion as long as you stay in the same
Let me
place
ask you
and you
this in
don't grow.
relation. Let me ask you this in relation to that. Do you think the fact that it's been so many, what we would call over here in the United States, the mom and pop idea of small businesses, we're talking about maybe a lot of businesses are under 50 people, for example, unless you got the multinational corporations like Fiat, and you think that that has kind of held things down in many
Absolutely.
respects.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely. Um, these small business owners are very jealous about their business,
I
and
see.
for them, it's very important to have full control. This is
Right.
why they have. For me, it's their biggest challenge to go
Okay.
beyond that.
And you think that
Okay.
that's limiting because until more recently, we talked, you know, the with the advent of artificial intelligence coming in now, you could see that those small companies are going to be really strained because they don't have arguably sufficient numbers of people. They don't have critical mass, so to speak, of their workforce. And so as the growth requirement goes exponential because of the pace of data collection and data use, which is driving all our industries, as that
Yeah.
goes exponential, that uh, is kind of like a boxed in mindset and a boxed in way of trying to do business. It almost causes you to fall off the cliff, doesn't it? Because you can't cope and you can't compete any longer. So
Right.
what has caused that shift in the mindset? Like, oh, heck, the old model doesn't work. What was it that was the tipping point for a lot of companies or a lot of private owner businesses, in your
Yeah.
opinion?
Well, I think that artificial intelligence is going to mark, the separation between what used to be, for small businesses, especially, and what will be, what was and what it will be. Um, I don't see. It's really difficult for me to see small business owners getting involved with AI. There's a lot of resistance in that,
Right.
and because they feel they do not have that control that I was talking to you about. And so perhaps what they will do is to hire somebody who is knowledgeable with AI, but at the same time, he will try to control him because they are close-minded, but they're not stupid. So they understand that there can be a menace there, there can be a threat if they give all the power, they give all the control to another person. They don't feel comfortable with that because they don't know what to do. So they will have to start, and some of them are starting to do that very slowly. Okay, remember that we have a very, very old heritage that we're
Right.
carrying on our backs, on how to deal with businesses, with shops, and how you relate to the clientele and stuff like that. So it's not easy. I understand that. I understand this resistance, but then you have to work on them. You have to acquire their trust, and they need to understand that we're there to help them. Okay, but they definitely need to break out of this resistance. Otherwise, they will not be able to grow anymore. And we know that in a system, in a natural system, that you either grow or you die. There is no other
Right.
there is no other option.
So I know you're a very systems-based person, like I am, and that's a big coaching style of yours. You call it
Yeah.
system intelligence, which I appreciate and identify with. And so, how are you? How are you, if you like, educating your audience to actually shift towards that type of philosophy to enable them to get off the linear track but onto the exponential track, so that they're making more in terms of their profit margins relative to if they kept on the same track, which
Sure.
eventually would lead them to the cliff's end where they would fall off the cliff. So how are you managing to uh, coax them, kicking and screaming in some cases, I'm sure, but uh, you know persuading them? How are you advising them? And to what extent, how receptive are they? How receptive are they? Is there a spectrum of some that are, yes, maybe women-led companies? You mentioned earlier on that the women seem to be quicker at picking
Oh yeah.
up on new ideas or a new philosophy than maybe the male gender. So give us a perspective on that.
Okay. The perspective is that they. Okay. First of all, we have to understand that men are more on execution. Okay. They need to move. They need action. So men are more keen about knowing what to do and how to do it. Okay. Um, the other thing is, and women are much more into emotional intelligence.
Right.
They're much more emotionally competent than men. Well, they naturally are that way with respect to men. Men always have great difficulty getting into that domain. They're starting to because they saw that they have no choice. Now, systemic intelligence is even a step further than emotional intelligence because it's about understanding really how reality works. What are the
Mm-hmm.
dynamics? What are the forces that you are confronting yourself with? What can be emotional, which can be physical, which can be moral. Okay, but we're talking about, as I will say, there are three things in our reality. There are laws, there are forces, and there are dynamics. That's all there is. Everything that we see and everything that we work with are these three things. And so this is where it all starts because when you have your systemic skills honed in the right way, automatically you will tend to work well on the emotional aspect, and you will be much more in control where it comes to the how can I say the old type intelligence, the classical intelligence. Okay, so that's why it's so important to start from the systemic intelligence. Now, this is a process that it's not easy to make people understand because, especially men, when you tell men, look, leave this aside for a moment, never mind how and why to do in a certain way, okay, never mind that, and focus on something else. Focus on understanding how the environment that you're working in actually operates. What are the laws involved there? What are the dynamics involved there? What are the forces that people are putting into that and that create the the cascade effect on the other two intelligences, which are emotional and classical, right? The traditional, whatever you want to call it, cognitive. And this is a very delicate process. You can do that when you get people's trust, because basically, when it all comes down to how do I do this? Okay, so unless they understand that talking about systemic intelligence will eventually get them to understand, how something works and how it has to be done, then they will trust you. But it's a longer process. But they cannot avoid it because today, as we're much more and more interconnected among ourselves, systemic intelligence becomes primary with respect to others.
It's very
Because
interesting. Yeah.
cognitive intelligence is about things that you do, goals and finances and all this stuff. It's there for you to work with. Okay, they may be difficult, but if you understand them, you have control on them. Systemic intelligence, you do not have that control. You need to understand that nature, reality, the environment has control. So what you do is that you have to switch position. You're not in control of that, but you can understand how systems work in order for you to make it easier for you to drive the forces, the laws, and the dynamics in systems to do what you want. So you work indirectly. It's an indirect type of intelligence. It's not direct as people would love to have.
That's really interesting. Let me take you back a little bit because I think as one appreciates the difference in the genders, and I think today one of the things, the criticisms that I have, and I frequently challenge people in social media, for example, or on group socials and chart boards and things up on social media, that there seems to be this attitude today to make us all the same and claim there's very little difference between the genders, which I think is folly because we are different, we're hormonally different, and so that's going to be
We are,
affecting the brains,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
our minds, and how we act. And then, as you say, there's the environmental factors which impact women really quite different, I'm sure, than men. I don't want to dive back to the well-trodden, well-spoken topics of that we were hunter-gatherers. I think the modern man has kind of lost a piece of that, but to try and paint us all as this vanilla of all being the same, it's just that we've got different body parts, I think is ludicrous. And you see that, but I think there was a pressure in terms of to have women break through this glass ceiling. That yes, it was there. They've had to over time become female equivalents of men, or how men have been in the workforce. And I've said for many times, I think that was a mistake because I believe when women are women and they break through, in many cases they're more capable in certain roles than their male gender equivalents are. And I think we've talked about that. But let's talk about the emotional intelligence piece, because I think that certainly is a topic which would appeal to the ladies or the women in the audience.
Yeah.
In terms of emotional mastery, if we can call it that, as a leadership skill or attribute, um, what inner skills? I mean, what inner skills must leaders have in order to stay grounded, but decisive, calm under pressure, when uncertainty triggers fears and reactivity, to prevent us having this paralysis analysis situation going on? What type of things can you encourage people to point them in the direction that, yeah, you need to develop this aspect so that you become or remain effective or grow to be even more effective as a leader in this dynamic, as I say, this VUCA world, this incredibly transient experience that we're going through now, that's being majorly impacted because of the changes that technology is now bringing.
Nigel, I'm sorry. Can I just interrupt you? You can edit that because I saw that's my fault. I'm sorry. I have I don't have enough power. I have to put on the charger, the
Okay.
battery charger. Okay.
Yeah.
Just give me, just give me,
Okay. Over to you.
um, men starting to become more emotionally intelligent. They have no choice because these are these levels, cognitive or classical, traditional intelligence and emotional and systemic, and then perhaps spiritual. They are in- set up hierarchically. So as we evolve, you have to evolve along this line. You can't go back and you can't stop. There's no such thing in nature as interruptions. So men are intelligently enough, they are willing to become more emotionally intelligent. They will not be the same as in emotionally intelligence as women. they will be in a different way in different aspects. For example, motivation, perhaps certain skills like sales, stuff like that. They may work well as women and even more because, of course, like in selling, you have to have a certain type of relationship with the other person. So you need to have emotional intelligence because if you don't grow and your customer, your client has done some work on emotional intelligence and you are not aligned with that, you're going to lose your client because your client is going to expect that you be emotionally intelligent,
Mhm.
that you
Mhm.
understand certain things, certain subtleties. And of course, there are other aspects, for example, resilience, um, and how can I say, the relationship part is more feminine.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
the thing that require more, well, something that you have to work to have more control. Remember that for men, control is everything, and much more than for women. Even
Mhm.
women have to have control. They need to know what's going to happen, but they do that in a different way. They do that, as they said, men need they build the situation, whereas women build relationships.
Mhm.
And so, in this way, that's how they can go on together because you need both. You need to control situations and you need
Mhm.
to control relationships, like a marriage. Okay, it's not a question of who has more power, who has more control. I mean, women are more prone to have a certain type of relationship with their child. Men give discipline, for example, which is an emotional skill. So, for example, this women they discipline, but it's more important to have a relationship to know that there is a bond much more than for men. Men explore other things. So I think that when men and women work together on this, in this, they can create really strong environment
Mhm.
where there is distance in different ways. I said, and there is no competition
Right. Okay.
because they don't have to compete. Because that is the other thing. I mean, especially in Latin and Italy, Greece, the southern part of Europe, manhood is still is a very strong, culturally strong
Pizza.
aspect.
Yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, um, we're getting there, but it's
Okay.
slow.
Okay. Understood.
But it's
So,
slow.
in terms of when we consider the tactics that you would use, then, so what you're saying then is personal identity, the male personal identity is a very very powerful concept. So does that impacts the the difference in the genders that's affecting the difference in the strategies that people would adopt in industry? And if that's the case, can you explain what the differences are? Is it divergent in some ways that men would take things that way, and women might take things in a slightly in a divergent way that would impact how the business would grow?
Yes, it's inevitable. It has to be done that way. Okay, so men and women need to understand what their role is. It's first and foremost, because if they understand their role, which is not imposed from by the other. In other words, men don't tell women what to do, and women don't tell men what to do. Okay, but if they understand and they agree on what their positions are and how they should go on uh, with the way they lead their business,
Mhm.
I sure said collaboration there.
How are those roles negotiated between the men and women leading companies
It
or
you
executives
require
in companies?
you need to be intelligent now, and I'm talking about intelligence in a very broad way, not emotional or cognitive or systemic. You need to understand. You need to be. Uh, you need to understand what the goal is. Because if you're a business owner and you do not understand that in order to get to that goal, you need some very specific skills that will get you there. And of course, you can do what a woman does, and a woman can do what a man does, but not as well.
Mhm.
So it's a partnership. Otherwise, God wouldn't have created men and women the way they are, and they are different.
Stylistically, though,
They feel things differently. They
right?
have different sensitivity, and that cannot be denied.
So these are
And
stylistic
so,
changes or differences. You would agree?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Can you
So
can
they have.
you can you highlight some situations that you've been in where stylistically you can say for a given type of problem that you were having to solve, that in your experience you've had um, with somebody that might be have been leading the business that was male, and then this was another business being led by women, and wow, they were quite differences, or were they small differences? Give our audience a little idea as to
Well,
what
what
that
I
looks
know,
like from your experience.
yeah, what I noticed over the year is that a woman, anything that is inevitable. Okay, so as I said, it's not that if women do the women's and men the men's stuff. It doesn't really work that way. What I saw happening a lot is I see women getting tougher and men getting softer.
Uh-huh.
That's what I saw.
And why do you think
So,
that is, Alex? Alex, why do you think that
well,
is?
because in other words, what happens is that if you want to work in this evolving world, uh, situations will ask you to draw out the feminine aspect of you if you're a man, and contrarily, for a woman, she has to bring forth her masculine aspect. So, and that is the situation. It's not something that they choose to do. It's not a strategy. It's something that they absolutely do. I've been seeing a lot. I've been working with women that are very tough, even tougher than men in certain situations. However, maintaining their femininity. And I saw men being much, I wouldn't say softer, but more condescending towards people, less. They're more understanding. They comprehend better the situations of a person, so they
Right.
draw out their feminine aspect. And so, even though you have male energy and female energy, the strategies, the way they show this, the way they evolve in this, is something where they can blend together. This
Uh-huh.
is what I've been seeing. So there's much that cuts out all the competition that there is, because if you do not have that, you are going to have competition. I mean, if male abide by their male stereotype, and so do the females, there will be contrast.
I see. Okay.
So it's what we do in family too. I mean, today a father with their child with their children is much softer than he used to be.
Uh-huh.
He still is expected to discipline his children because this is more manly. Women are not so good at being disciplined because their emotional aspect, their love, their tenderness, doesn't quite match their this, being too strict with their children. So they leave it to their husband or to
I'm
their
sure of
man
my
to
uh,
take
I'm sure of my
to
lady
take care of it.
friends that have Italian descent here in the United States might disagree with you, because there's some of them I know that are very authoritarian. I don't know if that's the American culture that's been brought out in them, but I know one or two executives here that are Italians, and they're very authoritative. So I hope that raises a few eyebrows with our audience.
I have a feeling though that if women uh, think that they have to be more authoritative, which authoritativeness doesn't mean necessarily to be strict. Okay.
Really? Yeah.
But if they need to be authoritarian, in other words, they need to show more strength, there's probably a bit of competition with men. That's my I would say that, because women are not naturally that strong. They love to leave that thing to their men, unless their environment requires them to do that.
Mhm.
So, for example, if they have to deal with lots of men, a woman has to grow a set of balls, as we say,
Right.
and
Right.
and she has to show that she can handle them. But it's not in their true nature.
I think it's important to be raising this. What you're painting here is a quite a character of the society that, and this is why I was excited to put this together, because I think this is still very, very important for people that are going to do business with Italian companies, to understand that something which is still historically grounded in aspects of Italian society, much more so than um, in societies such as the United States, where um, things have shifted quite far away from there. Let's talk about in relation to influencing. We talk because a lot of what we're talking about here, Alessandro, is influence. Do you think that the women in business in Italy use their persuasive capabilities? We talk about, how do we cause things to happen? We in business we're manipulative. We manipulate situations. This is part of this system intelligence that you were talking about before, because the environment causes us to act in certain ways. But on the humanistic side, we talk about persuasiveness. We're using our EQ, our emotional intelligence, to persuasive. Talk to us a little bit about that, as to in your society, in your business society in Italy. How is it that skill set or that attribute, how is persuasiveness, how does it manifest itself in business with entrepreneurs in Italian society, so that you can gain effectively the outcomes that you're chasing? Those types of pieces of information, I'm sure, for our audience would be fascinating to learn. And again, if you can draw this distinction between the men and the women, I think that's a fascinating thing, because I think the difference here in Italian society is right now is probably quite wide or broader than we would see in other parts of the world. For example, as I talk to people in Asia, it might be even further to the right from where you are. And for Westerners, especially here in the United States, Canada, that type of distinction is closed, I think, much more so than it has in other societies. So this dynamic, this understanding that you're providing us with, I think these are wonderful nuggets of information. It's wisdom, because if you're going in as somebody from New York expecting somebody in Asia, whether it's Korea, South Korea, or it's or in Dubai, or in Italy, to be a certain way, or maybe even in South America again, where there's still a very, very dominant male type society control, then you're going to be having problems. So this enlightenment that you're sharing with us, I think, is very, very valuable. So persuasiveness, how is that used in Italian business society? Give us a perspective on that. Sorry if my question was a bit long there.
No, it's fine. Okay. okay, let's say this: being manipulative is far easier than being persuasive.
Right.
Far easier. Okay. So, but of course, it doesn't work. Manipulation doesn't work because sooner or later, people will understand that you've manipulated them, and they will want to detach from you. So it doesn't really help. Okay? That being said, persuasion is, I see, for example, men, they are very good at persuasive, for example, in a sales situation. Okay, they know what to say, they know how to handle the other person, so they know how to influence him or her, and in that they are good. For women, it's much more natural to be like that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
when it comes to leadership, that is where you see the real. That's where you see the real difference, because as long as there aren't problems, if you're not under pressure,
Mhm.
to be um, strict, to be disciplined, and to be even detached is something that men do more spontaneously than women. They will have much more difficulty in handling that. So that's why they stick maternal to their maternal instinct to deal with these situations rather than hitting them head on. And
Do you
so
think that's something that
persuasion.
benefits them in negotiations? Then the fact that they've got that 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 superior persuasive uh, tool set in their set of skills in their toolbox over and in business situations, then is it vital then to have a female component over a complete male dominated situation? Because what you're saying is you're recognizing that, at least in your society, that in terms of persuasive capabilities, women have got guys beaten hands down. So why wouldn't you always ensure that you've got that skill set on your team when you're in a business and negotiation situation?
Well, if you know what you're doing and you understand and you have a good set of skills in negotiating, you understand when you must be open and caring, and when not, and when having said, okay, that's it. Okay. Um, we see, for example, how right now the Trump is doing in America. You really don't know what he's actually doing. Is he being too tough? And then he shows his toughness and then his sweetness. Okay, we can get through that. Okay, that's the kind of balance. But this is very confusing for some
Right.
people. But at the same time, it's a way to keep people on track because
Right.
on one side he says, "Okay, I'll be very tough with you if you don't do you have enemies all over the place." So he has to get softer and more conciliating, more open to new solutions. And that, in going back and forth like that, is going to get people, other people know where they can say between these two lines. Now, the same thing can happen even in businesses, even in here in Italy. If a man, for example, is shows his here, yes, authoritativeness in a manly way, because there are different way of being authoritative between men and women. They show it in a different way, but in any case, whether you're a man and a woman, you need to make people understand where you stand and where you're willing to go and where you're not willing to go. You can do that with toughness or you can do that with softness. As long as the lines, or the two extremes or the boundaries are well clear to the other person. And in that case, you can become more persuasive with being manipulative. Because you're manipulating perhaps the situation, but you're not manipulating the person, because you're telling the person, hey, I'm going from A to B. This is my point A and this is my point B. So within these boundaries, we can talk, we can negotiate, we can deal. Outside from that, there's no deal. And in that, perhaps men are more capable of maintaining this, whereas women may be a bit more tolerant if you with one with another. But if you want to be authoritative, you need to set boundaries. You cannot do without that. You
I see.
cannot you, you cannot be authoritative without that. Otherwise, people will not understand. They will get confused. How far can I go with that person? And that the other person has to make you understand how far you can go or in what direction you can go without getting out of the boundaries.
So some of the things, I'm listening to you very carefully, and I'm sure this is stimulating a lot of questions and potentially a lot of debate amongst people in the audience. And it'd be great to get the feedback on this. I think I'm fascinated by the things that you're saying. I can imagine some people in liberal society are not horrified. Well, maybe yes, they are. But these are the facts. I mean, what you're giving us is a kind of like a paint palette of these are the colors and these are the flavors in this society. And I think the great service that you're giving to us here in this interview is it's setting out what the reality is, not what our choices are, but what the reality is. And I think that's extremely important. Let's pick up on a couple of things. Therefore, is identity, is personal identity in Italian business society, is that more important than management tactics in some cases? Therefore, Alessandro?
Yeah, well, the character, the personality of a person, what that person believes in, is very important here in Italy.
Uh-huh.
More than, as you said, more than tactics, more than strategies, because in this way we are kind of Italians are more feminine. Okay, so they love the emotional impact, even if they're men. Um, so they prefer to deal with a person who is willing to show where he stands, what he believes in, and that he will, take people to a certain place, take them to a certain direction, and that is all part of the personality of that
Mhm.
person. And it's much easier for people to identify with that person, connect, most importantly, with that
Uh-huh.
person. Okay, connection here is vital. Okay, for an Italian, feeling connected with a person and not with what the person is actually offering to you, or vice versa,
Uh-huh.
it's much more important than the tactics. Okay? They
That's
want to
quite
see. They need to understand if they want to feel secure. They want to feel in control. They need to understand what the person in front of them is like.
uh-huh.
Okay, so and that's why I see many salesmen, leaders. It's the approach they have
Right.
with other people, and then of course, like I said, the people want to build boundaries, and as long as they stay within the boundaries, that is the emotional strategy that they use in order to create connection.
So if you
But
were
they need
selling
to
in
have a
Italy,
connection.
if you were selling in Italy, and I'm going to use automotive as a great example because I'm a petrol head, and I love cars and I love Italian stuff. I
Yeah,
think Italian, design houses. Pininfarina is my favorite. I just love the designs and things that come up. But in terms of Italian society, then, and I'm talking tactics, I'm talking brand. Um, for you to have, if you're interested in business in Italy, then it's very important for people that maybe are investing or partnering with in Italian business society for people to be able to have a strong connection with the brand rather than just a great business opportunity, they have to have empathy with the brand. That would seem to be the case. And a great example of that is Ferrari. I mean, everybody in Italy, I'm sure, other than the people that love Lamborghinis, potentially, love it. You see this in the Grand Prix. It's Ferrari, Ferrari, Ferrari. I mean, it's fanatical. And why is that? Because they have an EQ, they have an emotional connection. That's a great example, I think, to illustrate that point you were making. That they have a connection with the brand. I mean, the fact that that Ferraris are notoriously temperamental, like all high performance things are, doesn't detract from the attractiveness of the brand. And so, coming back to identity, that question I asked you, is identity more important than just the tactics? There's an example there of the very point that you're making, that people, if they're going to do business with Italian products or Italian businesses, then your countrymen, your business people, want you to have that connection. That's an emotional connection, rather than just a straight a bottom line return on investment scenario. I mean, that's clearly has to be fundamental to every business. But if you were to do business with me over somebody else, if I've got that personal connection with the brand, your brand, and there's an emotional connection there, you're going to do business. You're saying you're going to do business with me over somebody else. That's correct?
Well, of course, if you have that connection, yes. And as far as identity, as you said, you may have noticed that many big companies that are famous all over the world, most of them carry the surname of the founder,
Yes.
which is not very common. Well, there may be some, for example, I was thinking about a car brand in
Right.
okay. So, whereas here you have Ferrari, Lamborghini, Maserati,
Yeah.
and what have you. It's the name. It's just not in the cars, but in jewelry, and especially in those things that are very soft in abroad.
Right.
Italian made stuff. Most of them have the surname of the
Right.
founder.
Right.
Okay, and that shows you that how important the connection with the person is
Right. Yeah.
instead of the brand itself. Of course, even if the person is longer, like in the case of these great ones, Ferrari and Lamborghini and Maserati, I think they're all dead. All these founders are dead,
Right.
and still, but it's still the name is still very strong, and that tells you something about what is important for Italians,
Right.
how strongly the connection with the person is instead of what he has done or she has done.
Right.
Okay.
Is that? Do you think
So
is that an outward expression of trust in the name because there's a familial connection in the background, or
well,
traditionally?
it's a a name is abstract.
Yes.
Okay. A name is concrete. I can associate the name with a person. A brand that is not a name or a surname, it's just a word, sometimes invented,
Right.
and so it cannot create the same type of connection. Perhaps like in the United States or in Anglo-Saxon countries, that is not a big problem.
Uh-huh.
It's not the problem actually. That it's a preference to having to do with a name instead of whichever other name,
Uh-huh.
whatever it is, like American Motors or X or
Yeah.
we like to have a name connected to a product. It's
Yes.
very important for us, especially with smaller businesses.
Right.
Smaller businesses are very like and I haven't made a calculation, but at least 50 or 60% of the names of small businesses are all connected to a person.
So the branding is very much still bound up in the familial, traditional
Yes,
history.
tradition is very important. In
So that's an
fact,
interesting point, that then
yeah,
emphasizing tradition when you're dealing with Italian businesses, that's something that you should have checkmarked sort of at the top of your list, that are all the things that one would expect in modern business have to apply. But in Italy, you've got to have this too. Otherwise, you may not be seen as favorably as the next potential
Well, I mean, it's
client.
not that people,
Right.
read this doesn't be the name of a person, but it's just a question of preference. They feel
Right.
more, I don't know, secure, connected, whatever. They have a relationship with a name and not a brand.
Right.
And tradition, as you mentioned, it is very important because we have a history. Italy has a history, very long history, and so tradition in food, food is one of these. Of course, Italian food is known all over the world, and the quality of the food, because there is a tradition, that's very connection to the land. Okay, because for example, if we say spaghetti alla carbonara, people don't know that, or amatriciana, or different types of spaghettis. They are very attached to a place, a site
Right.
in
Yes.
Italy. Okay, people need to understand that there is a connection between the product, that it's not coming out of nowhere, and it's for them, and for us, it has
Right.
depth. It has more depth.
Uh-huh. Okay. Alessandro, we all know that we've got to grow in order to survive first, but obviously to thrive we have to grow. So in your business and in your travels within Italian business, what are people doing to get themselves future ready so that they can continue to compete? We've already said that uh, things are expanding exponentially. So if they keep going along their linear flow that they've been, their bolt-on business will, we'll put this in, we'll grow our business by, a linear amount, they're going to get left behind, or they're going to go out of business. So how are you trying to influence businesses to think about the things that we've talked about this in this interview?
I think the smart thing for talent to do is to find a synthesis between tradition and progress and technology.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so now we have artificial intelligence, and it's creating a lot of movement today. I mean, people today, even in Italy, all they talk about is artificial intelligence.
Okay.
Now, it's for a kid having a new toy, which is normal. Okay, a kid with a new toy will enjoy, he will want that. All he thinks about is the new toy. But we must not forget our traditions, because I think that ultimately, on the long products, well, not services, but mostly products, based on tradition, because we are
Yeah.
associated with tradition. And so we have to see artificial intelligence and all this new technology as a great support for our operation. But what we must show outside is where we come from,
Okay.
uh, because
That's
that
good to know.
is what attracts people abroad.
I think that's quite a different. That's quite distinctly different from, as you say, other parts of Anglo-Saxon Europe, like Germany, France,
Yeah.
the UK, the Scandinavian countries. I think that's quite different. So it's very important from a global cultural perspective that people understand that difference.
Yeah, it is.
That's really profound. So thank you for sharing that with us. Alessandro, this has been great. One of the things I'd like to do, we're coming up to the hour now, so I'd like to ask you one final question,
Sure.
and I'd like to rack your brains on this a little bit. So this is my fun question that I like to ask everybody that we're interviewing, the same sort of question. And it is one that you probably heard before, but it's interesting for me because I've got quite a diverse set of reactions and answers to this. But here you are, you've had a mature career. If you could go back to the 20-year-old Alessandro Carli and say, son, this is going to happen in your life, what would you tell them in order to prepare them for the future that they can't imagine right now? What pieces of advice would you give them?
Wow.
I know I've caught you off guard with that. So
it's what, yeah.
just give me it from the gut.
Actually, okay, perhaps I can, what I tell my children, it wouldn't be that different. And it's the same advice, everything that I would tell them to care more. And, sometimes, I'm a Virgo, and so I need to understand things, how they work, etc. And so sometimes I weigh too much the pros and the cons, and that has slowed me down a lot in my life. Um, uh, Perhaps I should have been in certain circumstances more daring. And of course, you can make mistakes, you can fall, you can hurt yourself, but it is. I think it's worthwhile taking these risks. And that I was what I would tell myself, the 20. Be more daring. Don't. I mean, life is a game anyway. Okay, it's serious on one side, but it is a game that you have to play because we don't know the rules. Actually,
Right.
we don't know. We do not understand the rules of this game. So we need to find out what these rules are by making experience. And you cannot make experience if you don't dare, if you don't go, if you don't break through your resistances, and especially your intellectual thirst that always want to find the right reason for doing things. I don't think that's the right road. I think people should really follow their desires. Desires are not something that come out of nothing. They're deeply, uh, not buried, but they're ingrained in us. And if when we find something that we really want, that really trigger our desires, I think we shouldn't
Suppress them.
and so
So you're saying don't
right
suppress
precautions.
your.
Of course, I mean you just don't, huh?
So you're saying don't suppress your inner feelings.
Yes, yes. Inner feeling, but what asking people, okay, what would you want to be when you will be 60? What will you want to have achieved? And okay, so I reversed the question. Okay, instead of what I would tell him, okay, what I'm going to ask him to say, when you'll be like me, what will achieve? What you want to achieve?
Right.
So
Right. Interesting. Everybody gives a different answer to this. It's fascinating.
So I think
I'm
so.
probably
And
going
which
to compile something at some point when I've got maybe 1,000 of these. Here's the perspective from different regions and different types of personalities, both men and women, and this is what people are saying. I think that might be a very helpful thing for young people. That here's the thoughts of 1,000 people. How applicable is that to me? Alessandro, this has been fantastic. I think you've provided some really wonderful perspectives, some golden nuggets there. You've given me an hour of your wisdom from a wonderful life, well experienced. I thank you. I hope you've enjoyed it. We will do this again.
Nigel. It was a real pleasure talking to you. You're a great host, and it was very easy for me to talk to you.
I'm grateful for you agreeing to do this, and I think that it's going to be extremely helpful to our audience. So with that, thank you. We'll see each other again really soon. Take really good care of yourself. And
looking forward to it.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.
See you. Bye-bye.